On Monday, President Donald Trump signed a new executive order on drug pricing. Trying to lower the prices of prescription drugs. Interesting. Could this be a good thing? Will it help? Well, let's look into it. Now, the new order calls on the health department, led by RFK Jr., to broker new lower prices for drugs with drug makers over the next 30 days. Or, there's an or in here. Well, what will happen if they don't voluntarily lower their prices? Well, apparently a new rule that would tie the price the U.S. pays for medications to lower prices paid by other countries will be put into effect. We're going to equalize, Trump said during a Monday morning press conference. We're all going to pay the same. We're going to pay what Europe pays. Hey, you know what? That would be a great thing. You know how much more we pay than Europe? About 3 times more for the same medications from the same corporations. So, yeah, if we could pay the same rate that Europe pays, well, that'd be fantastic. I'd love that. But there are issues. What do I mean? Well, for one, there's really not a whole lot of evidence that this executive order will actually help the millions of Americans who have private health insurance. Now, while it is true that the federal government has the most power to shape the price that it pays for drugs from Medicare and Medicaid, how this will impact drugs in the private market, we don't know. One of the reasons that patients in the U.S. pay more for drugs than patients in any other countries is because those countries, they have government healthcare systems that set prices that they're willing to pay. They have universal healthcare systems, where in America, we do not. We have this hodgepodge of public/private insurance. Okay, so you know how this is going to impact when, again, the federal government doesn't really have power to be able to negotiate drug prices for private insurance plans. How this is really going to have, how much of an impact this is actually going to have is questionable. And by the way, I said kind of the same thing when it was Biden that was doing the, 10 drugs that were negotiated by Medicare. Yes, it's going to help people, right, if they're able to do this. But at the same time, we really do need a different, thing, a different system, okay? Now, that said, before I get to that, I do want to get to some of the crying that the pharmaceutical industry is doing, because I kind of tells me that maybe this could be a good sign, possibly. Okay. Well, here's Stephen J. Ubel, president and CEO of Pharma. That's the big pharma lobbying group that has used all of its power to try to prevent any sort of lowering of prescription drug prices, as well as moving us towards a universal healthcare system. Here's what he said. Importing foreign prices from socialist countries would be a bad deal for American patients and workers. Really? Because people in those socialist countries seem to be doing much, much better than we are. They live longer. They have cheaper prescription drugs, and they just generally do better than we here in the United States. How would this be a bad deal? He says, it would mean less treatments and cures and would jeopardize the hundreds of billions our member companies are planning to invest in America. Okay. How, when these treatments and cures are actually developed and financed by public money in our university system? That's who does all the research. And then these patent trolls will come in from these big companies and buy up the patents and then sit on it for decades. That's the problem here. I should say it's one of the problems, right? The other problem here is obviously the pharmaceutical companies and their profits. Their relentless pursuit of profits, okay? again, I mentioned the patent trolling. They sit on patents for decades. It prevents competition from generics. And so, yeah, that drives up prices. They can keep those prices high on drugs that, again, were developed with public money from public investment. That said, Donald Trump, in his order, does not target any of those people, does not target the pharmaceutical companies. Instead, he protected the pharmaceutical companies and is blaming who? Other countries. Of course. Other countries for the high price Americans pay for drugs. What? Yeah. Look, here's the thing. The other countries have universal health care. That means the government can negotiate all drug prices because they're pretty much the only major insurer. Okay? That allows them to have the leverage to be able to negotiate drug prices. Whereas, again, in this country, we don't have that. So will this help? Probably not. Rachel Sachs, a health law expert at Washington University, said this plan, quote, "It really does seem that the plan is just to ask manufacturers to voluntarily lower their prices to some point, which is not known. If they do not lower their prices to the desired point, HHS shall take other actions with a very long timeline, some of which could potentially, years in the future, lower drug prices." Okay. So all of this really just depends on these companies voluntarily lowering prices. Oh, great. Okay. Again, the health department has the authority to change prices on drugs covered by Medicare and Medicaid because it can set some regulations. That said, in this country, the agency's power to do so over the vast majority of drugs is pretty limited. Okay. The price that millions of Americans covered by private insurance pay for drugs is very difficult for the agency to do anything about. Which brings me to the actual solution, right? The only way to really fix this problem is not to blame the other countries, but to actually emulate them, to do what they have already done. And what is that? It is to guarantee health care to every single person in this country. That's it. Medicare for all. Universal health care. That is the only way for us to actually be able to rein in not only the high costs of prescription drugs, obviously, but also the high costs of healthcare in general. We could solve so many problems if we actually took on pharmaceutical greed as well as health insurance greed. Okay? That's it. That is the only solution here. And as you can see, though, the Trump administration is not at all interested in universal health care. They're just interested in what I see as kind of picking around the edges, right? Doing a little bit of kind of reform around the edges, maybe lower the price of a couple of prescription drugs, and then lauding these companies for maybe taking some of the drugs that, yes, they make a lot of money on and just reducing the price, but just a little bit. If they do that, Trump administration is going to take a victory lap and say, well, that's it. Problem solved. While the problem isn't solved at all, we're still going to be paying the highest prices for prescription drugs in the entire world with very little recourse to be able to actually do anything real about it. So this is just a, I don't know, paper tiger, one of those things, one of those threats. You know, oh, we're going to do something about it if you don't voluntarily lower your prices. I'm pretty sure pharma is going to be like, all right, bring it. Because there's really nothing right now that you can actually do to us. So I see it as, pretty much a nothing burger type of thing that is not going to do what he says it's going to do. It's just not going to be worth the hype. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.